Hey everyone, this is Louis7 and I have an exciting video because I want to talk about a potential new class coming to the Lord of the Rings Online in the future. There has been some information from the recent Brawler public beta server that had a first build for update 28 that suggests a new class called the Brawler may be in the works by Standing Stone Games, the developers of LOTRO, and as we will cover, this is actually a reasonable leak if you would call it that in the first place. But for this video, I just first of all wanted to inform you all of this unexpected news, but I also do want to talk about the possibilities of the potential new class. And the background gameplay is as relevant as I can make it with the champion class and the current LOTRO, maybe some like Brawler or beta gameplay to go with it. But to start off, I personally have seen two indications that the Brawler would be an upcoming class in the game. The first one is in the social panel. You can filter classes and Brawler is on the list. The second one is at the Isengard Tavern, which is a building that is only available on the Brawler beta client. And in that building there is an NPC that gives you class trait points to help boost you to a max power character to test out whatever new content there is. Well, this NPC has trait points for a Brawler, and in the description it says he gives trait points from class deeds for that specific quest there. So to be more exact, it does say Brawler TBD, and TBD most likely stands for to be determined in this case. I think that's what it usually is in these betas. So I did want to take a moment to move in game and show you all about the actual Brawler class, what I have seen. So in the social panel, this was the first discovery. In the classes filter list, you can filter the Brawler. So if you uncheck them all, you can check the Brawler there, and there are no Brawlers in the game because the class isn't actually in this beta build. But that was the first hint that the Brawler class is filterable in the classes in the social panel. So I also wanted to show you all what I saw about the class trait points quest, and if I go to Bobo, this NPC, he's the one that gives the class trait points in the Isengard Tavern. But you'll actually see it is not an available quest on this character. I have gone on to a few alts now to test this, and for some reason that is missing, but I will show you screenshots I at least took. I didn't get an actual video of it, but I will show screenshots I took of the available quest and what happened when I accepted it and turned it in and all of that. So that is all of the information I personally saw in the game, and I have not found any reports of anything else referencing this mysterious Brawler class. So I just mentioned that that was all the information I found out, but actually after already recording this video, I found out some more. So it looks like some people have found that there is also raid gear for Brawler TBD, so that's potential raid gear upcoming for a Brawler class, perhaps in Gundabad as well. And then there was also a phrase in the client local English.dat to speak with the Brawler trainer. That was from WanderV on the LOTRO forums, and I'll share a screenshot of this to give proper credit to the people who found this information out, which is definitely helpful here. So at this point, I do want to make it clear that I don't know for sure anything going on with the Brawler, and the rest of this video is really speculation based on what we have seen in the beta and how things may line up in the future with a new class. I think it is up to you to decide if you believe this means there will be a new class, but I also want to say I'm not sure how or why this happened in our beta build, like why this is a thing we saw from it. So if the Brawler is an upcoming class, it was likely a mistake that they put in there and sort of a leak because of it, or they actually could have been testing out other things in the beta, and again, any mention of the Brawler may be unintentional, but kind of the point here is I don't think any of this was put in there on purpose. And to get moving on, I want to talk first about some justifications for why the Brawler makes sense as a new class in LOTRO's future, and second I will talk about the exciting possibilities of a new Brawler class. We are on the somewhat close horizon to the full Gundabad expansion pack. We haven't been given any release details besides it being after update 28, War of the Three Peaks. I would actually expect the Gundabad expansion to be in the mid to late 2020, during the usual release for expansion, so basically September to November or somewhere around there. But a fresh new expansion would be a great time to line up a new class to release. And then if we look at the Brawler name, at least to me, that sounds like something that would thematically fit well into the Gundabad expansion. So the timing of the potential release of the new class to go along with next year's expansion, I think that just gives additional reason for this to be an actual upcoming new class. I do want to look more into the Brawler name itself. So if you think of a Brawler, that is a very generic term for a fighter, and we have seen many fighters in LOTRO like the Champion and maybe even Burglar or possibly Guardian, but the Brawler class could actually be more in on a fighter that focuses on hand-to-hand combat or utilizing like the available tools around them in combat. That would contrast to the other melee classes who focus on their weaponry skills and they have like more finesse in combat. And actually thinking that, disregarding that finesse is actually like a generic stat in LOTRO. But another thing that comes to mind is basically somebody who gets in loud fights a lot, and bar fights is commonly portrayed as like a drunken brawler at least. So if you picture somebody who loves to fight and also loves to get drunk, you may be thinking of a dwarf. And this links us back to the upcoming Gundabad expansion, which is focused on dwarves. Gundabad itself is a dwarven structure overrun by orcs, but the idea I'm getting at here is a brawler class sounds like it could fit perfectly in the current theme we are seeing with Gundabad, and that is really what I actually immediately thought when I saw the class name in the Update 28 beta as we looked at. But it is not a ton of information we have to go off of. We do at least have, or at least I have, a few more reasons to believe that Brawler would actually be an upcoming class in LOTRO's future. And I also think it is fair to look at this from Standing Stone Games' potential point of view. They are probably looking at a way to make the upcoming Gundabad expansion like extra exciting, and a brand new class to go with an expansion is a great way to do that. Additionally, many players suspect after 2020 and all the free content they had given away that the developers of LOTRO or Standing Stone Games are in need of funding basically, especially like with what's going on with the monetization of the War of the Three Peaks Update 28, which is coming soon. So if releasing a new class would generate more revenue for them next year, it would make sense from that standpoint as well. But those are really all of the justifications I have for why I think this small leak of information may actually be pointing to a new class in LOTRO's future. I do want to briefly mention that there is some slight concern from my end on any potential new class coming to LOTRO. So SSG does have some trouble balancing classes as it is, and even though they have done a better job lately, I think of the classes that already exist in the game, just adding a new one to balance on top of that would not be a great thing from that perspective, especially if the Brawler has a tank specialization. There are so many things wrong with tank balance right now. But moving on from that, since this has been super short so far, this video, it was mainly to inform you all of this development on the beta server and some reason why the Brawler class makes sense. But I do want to take this opportunity to talk a little bit more about some possibilities with a Brawler class in the game. The Brawler is somebody who likes to fight with their hands or tools around them rather than specializing in any sort of weaponry compared to LOTRO's other melee classes. And compared to other games in MMORPGs, this sounds like a monk from World of Warcraft among other games with similar monks, without the whole spiritual part of course, but it also sounds a bit like a warrior without proper training. And that's kind of like a champion in LOTRO without the proper combat training with all the weapons and stuff. And again, the Brawler instead, at least to me, it sounds like it relies on instinct and their self-training in combat. And even other games do have generic fighter-like classes that once again rely on unarmed fights, or at least using close-range weaponry. So the Brawler sounds like a weaponless fighter so far, and importantly, LOTRO does not allow you to fight weaponless, at least right now. And a new class that does that would have some serious implications because basically all of the damage skills in the game are tied to weapon damage, and every class has one legendary weapon at least, which is a significant part of character progression after level 50, but especially after level 100. Now, there is a way I think that weaponless fighting could work in the game and as it currently is. So they could do it like the Beorning and make it so you effectively like switch stances where you are unarmed, but you still technically do have your weapons equipped. And they could even make it a point in combat where you have to switch between like the unarmed and using your actual weapons, which are equipped, just as some sort of gameplay for the class. But just to point out, I keep saying weapons plural because a Brawler, at least to me, doesn't sound like somebody who would wield a giant weapon with two hands. But so far I'm creating an idea for a Brawler that could work in the game, and of course I don't know for sure that this is how anything would work with just like this potential upcoming class, but I think it actually does give more reason for us to think that it is possible that Standing Stone Games could be working on the Brawler class. And at this point we have at least a general background I made up on the Brawler, though, and I want to point out I think the class would most fit with the dwarf race, especially considering the whole Gundabad timing from earlier in this video, but also the race of man. Hobbit, I am not sure. It's something I thought of, but I would guess they are generally too peaceful for a brawler class. But that said, they do have guardians and burglars. And otherwise, elves, I don't think brawler at all fits the elf theme. But anyway, moving on, I think at this point we can take a look at actual brawlers in LOTRO in game right now. So there are many enemies in LOTRO that are called brawler, and I'll just list a few examples off here, and thanks to the LOTRO wiki for this great resource on NPCs in the game. But to start off, there is the Dower Hand Brawler in Iorbar's Peak that is unarmed and they use their fists in combat. There is also the Tarkrip Brawler in North Downs that uses a long curled dagger in one hand to fight. Then there is the Dunlending Brawler who uses a single one-handed club in combat. In Moria there is a Globsnaga Brawler who uses an axe to fight. And last up there is an Ingmarum Brawler in Evendom who also uses an axe to fight. So that is again just a few examples of brawlers in game, and of note they are all enemies of some kind, so it's kind of limited to see what they could really do as a class on their own just from generically named brawler NPCs. But I think it actually does give some insight into what a brawler could look like not only in LOTRO but just also fitting in the whole Lord of the Rings lore and world there. So one of the first things I actually noticed looking at this list was quite a few of these brawlers did use a weapon. Two of them had axes, in fact. So the idea of them using weapons in combat and not being unarmed is a real possibility. But then one of them did just go unarmed, and I think of note that was the Dower Hand Brawler, which basically, besides him being evil and all that, was exactly what I was picturing when I thought of a brawler. I thought of an unarmed dwarf who likes to fight. The last thing I want to talk about with the potential brawler class is how they could fit into LOTRO specifically compared to other classes. So first off, the brawler would be a melee class, and we have already covered the unarmed versus weapon focused aspect. But at first, though, I was thinking the brawler could be a DPS or a tank. So as a DPS, they would use quick attacks but occasionally whip out a powerful knockout type blow. Basically a knockout punch is how I would envision the gameplay for them to work. And as a tank, brawlers would have naturally built up a lot of stamina and defense in their history of fighting. So even without a shield, they could parry and block with their body, with their arms, basically countering enemy attacks. And even if they did take a few hits, they would just have enough raw health or morale at LOTRO to survive the attacks. And to go back to comparing to other games real quick, the DPS spec could look like the monk in World of Warcraft, who likes to switch things up and use different moves. They actually never like to repeat the same ability twice in a row. And on top of that, the brawler could have some very fast attacks in LOTRO, and then the monk tank in World of Warcraft is also an easy one to pick on, and that's called the Brewmaster, and that brings back the visions for me of the drunken brawler who basically uses beer to ease the pain of combat, and then that just helps them go recklessly aggro and tank foes and be your group's tank. So that was it for this section. I just wanted to give some of my thoughts on how the brawler class could work and fit into the Lord of the Rings Online as it is now. To quickly recap, the background ideas of the brawler class being an unarmed fighter actually do fit in with some of the enemy NPCs as we saw, and there is the possibility they could utilize regular weapons, even though I at least had some ideas for how the unarmed combat could work. And before all of that, we actually talked about how this class, at least the one I'm envisioning in this video, would make sense as an actual upcoming class with the Gundabad expansion coming to LOTRO next year. I think the Brawler class would just fit in thematically well with that. But that is all I really wanted to cover with this video. Again, I just wanted to inform you all of this new information development on the public beta for LOTRO while we were previewing Update 28. And I also wanted to just further explore some of the possibilities of the Brawler class and why it makes sense really. Anyway, this was a bit of an unusual video, though I hope everybody enjoyed it and learned something useful with the Brawler information, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing for more or becoming a channel member to support the content, and thanks for watching everyone.